In the vast rolling landscapes of Anatolia, a new power was stirring. This was the late 13th century. The great Seljuk Sultanate, once a mighty force, was crumbling. Its authority was fading, like the setting sun over the dusty plains. Into this vacuum of power stepped numerous small Turkish principalities known as beyliks. Each was led by a bey, a chieftain, a warrior. They were rivals, all vying for land and influence in a fractured world. One of these beyliks, nestled on the frontier of the fading Byzantine Empire, was small and seemingly insignificant. The leader of this small tribe was a man named Osman. History knows him as Osman I. He was a figure of immense charisma and strategic vision. Legends tell of a dream he had, a vision that foretold his destiny. In this dream, a great tree grew from his body. Its mighty branches stretched out to cover the entire world, casting a shadow over 3 continents. Inspired by this powerful vision, Osman and his followers began their campaign. They were known as the Ghazis. These were warriors for the Islamic faith, driven by a powerful sense of purpose. Osman's warriors, skilled in horsemanship and seasoned in the harsh realities of frontier life, began to chip away at the Byzantine defenses, capturing town after town, fort after fort. After Osman's passing, the mantle of leadership fell to his son, Orhan. He continued his father's work with remarkable energy and skill. Orhan captured the important Byzantine city of Bursa in 1326 and made it the first official capital of the Ottoman state. With Bursa as their base, they established the institutions of a formal government. They created a currency, organized a standing army, and developed a civil administration. Orhan's gaze soon turned westward, across the narrow straits of the Dardanelles and towards the continent of Europe. In 1354, a powerful earthquake struck the Gallipoli Peninsula, toppling the walls of its Byzantine fortresses. Seeing this as a sign from heaven, Orhan's forces crossed the water and occupied the strategic location. For the first time, the Ottomans had a permanent foothold on European soil. From this small bridgehead, the expansion would continue with breathtaking speed under Orhan's successor, Murad I. The Balkans were a patchwork of competing kingdoms and principalities: Serbs, Bulgarians, Hungarians, and Albanians. Murad I pushed deep into the heart of the peninsula. He moved the capital from Bursa to Edirne, also known as Adrianople, in 1369, planting the Ottoman flag firmly in Europe. The climax of this initial European campaign came in 1389 at the Battle of Kosovo. Here, on the Field of Blackbirds, an Ottoman army led by Murad faced a coalition of Balkan forces, primarily Serbs under Prince Lazar. The Battle of Kosovo ended in a decisive Ottoman victory, though both leaders, Sultan Murad and Prince Lazar, perished in the conflict. The battle broke the back of Serbian resistance and cemented Ottoman control over much of the southern Balkans. For centuries, one city had stood as the ultimate prize, the symbol of imperial power and Christian faith in the East: Constantinople. It was the capital of the Byzantine Empire, a city protected by legendary walls that had repelled countless sieges for over 1,000 years. But in the spring of 1453, a young, brilliant, and utterly determined sultan named Mehmed II gathered a colossal army outside its formidable walls. He was just 21 years old, and he was about to change the course of history forever. Mehmed was a true Renaissance man, fluent in multiple languages, a patron of the arts, and a student of science and engineering. But above all, he was a military genius. He commissioned a Hungarian engineer named Orban to construct enormous bronze cannons, larger than any seen before. These superguns could hurl massive stone balls weighing over half a ton, designed to pulverize the ancient stone ramparts. The siege began in April 1453. For weeks, the thunder of Mehmed's cannons echoed across the Bosphorus, relentlessly pounding the walls day and night. The city's defenders, led by the last Byzantine emperor, Constantine XI, fought back with desperate courage. The city's greatest defense was a massive iron chain stretched across the entrance to its harbor, the Golden Horn, preventing the Ottoman navy from attacking its weaker sea walls. In a stroke of audacious brilliance, Mehmed devised a solution. He ordered his men to construct a greased log road over the hills behind the Genoese colony of Galata. In a single night, his soldiers and oxen dragged 70 ships overland, completely bypassing the chain and launching them directly into the Golden Horn. The defenders awoke to the sight of an enemy fleet in their protected harbor. Their morale was shattered. On the 29th of May, 1453, after 53 days of relentless siege, the final attack began. The elite Janissary troops stormed the breaches in the walls. Amidst fierce and bloody fighting, the Ottoman flags were raised over the ramparts. Mehmed rode into the city, not as a destroyer, but as a conqueror. He went to the great cathedral of Hagia Sophia and, awestruck by its beauty, ordered it converted into a mosque. He declared the city the new capital of his empire, renaming it Istanbul. If Mehmed II was the conqueror, then the Sultan who reigned from 1520 to 1566 was the empire's master architect. This was Suleiman I, known in the West as the Magnificent and in the East as the Lawgiver. His reign is widely considered the absolute zenith of Ottoman power, prestige, and prosperity. Suleiman was a formidable military commander, personally leading his armies on 13 major campaigns. He expanded the empire's borders to their greatest extent. His armies marched deep into Europe, capturing Belgrade and the island of Rhodes, and decisively defeating the Kingdom of Hungary at the Battle of Mohacs in 1526. This victory at Mohacs laid much of Central Europe open to the Ottomans. In 1529, Suleiman stood at the very gates of Vienna, the heart of the Habsburg domains. Although the siege was ultimately unsuccessful, the very presence of an Ottoman army so deep in Europe struck fear into the hearts of Christian monarchs. To the east, he waged successful wars against the Safavid Empire of Persia, capturing Baghdad and securing control over Mesopotamia. His powerful navy, under the command of the legendary Admiral Barbarossa Hayreddin Pasha, dominated the Mediterranean Sea. The Ottoman Empire was now a true global superpower, stretching from Hungary to Yemen, from Algeria to Iraq. But Suleiman's greatness was not defined by conquest alone. He was also a just ruler and a brilliant administrator, which earned him the title the Lawgiver, or Kanuni. He oversaw a complete overhaul of the empire's legal system. He codified centuries of traditional laws into a single, comprehensive legal framework that would remain in force for centuries. This code covered everything from criminal law and land tenure to taxation and the status of non-Muslim subjects. Under Suleiman's patronage, the arts and architecture flourished as never before. This was the age of the great architect Mimar Sinan, who designed hundreds of masterpieces across the empire. Mosques, bridges, palaces, and public baths built during this era are still admired today for their elegance and engineering genius. Suleiman's reign was truly magnificent, a period when the Ottoman Empire was not just a military juggernaut, but a vibrant and brilliant civilization at the pinnacle of its glory. Life within the vast Ottoman Empire was a rich and complex tapestry, woven from countless different cultures, languages, and religions. At its heart was the bustling capital, Istanbul. It was one of the largest and most cosmopolitan cities in the world, a crossroads where Europe and Asia met. The Grand Bazaar was a labyrinth of covered streets, a vibrant marketplace filled with the sights, sounds, and smells of global trade. Here, one could find spices from the East Indies, silks from Persia, furs from Russia, and glassware from Venice. The social structure was organized under the millet system. This was a remarkably tolerant and practical approach to governing a multi-ethnic, multi-religious empire. Each major religious group, such as the Greek Orthodox Christians, the Armenian Christians, and the Jews, was recognized as a distinct millet or nation. Each millet was allowed to govern its own internal affairs according to its own laws and customs. They could run their own schools, religious courts, and charitable institutions. As long as they paid their taxes and remained loyal to the Sultan, they were granted a significant degree of autonomy. The Ottoman contribution to world culture, particularly in architecture, was immense. The master architect Mimar Sinan, who served under Suleiman the Magnificent, perfected the design of the Ottoman mosque. He created buildings that were both structurally daring and aesthetically breathtaking. These structures were more than just places of worship. They were complex social centers that included schools, hospitals, libraries, and public baths, forming the heart of the community. Innovation was not limited to architecture. The Ottomans made significant contributions in science, medicine, and cartography. Ottoman physicians developed new surgical techniques and wrote encyclopedic medical texts that were studied across the Islamic world. Ottoman cartographers, like the famous Piri Reis, produced remarkably accurate maps of the world, including detailed charts of the Mediterranean and the coastlines of the Americas. This vibrant intellectual and artistic life was the true engine of the empire, a testament to its cultural dynamism during its golden age. At the very core of the Ottoman military machine was a unique and formidable fighting force, the Janissaries. Their name, Janissary, means new soldier. They were the first modern standing army in Europe, a full-time professional infantry corps, loyal only to the Sultan. They were created in the 14th century by Sultan Murad I. The Janissaries were renowned for their strict discipline, their distinctive uniforms, their martial music, and their absolute fearlessness in battle. The method of recruiting Janissaries was known as the Devsirme system, or the levy of boys. Periodically, Ottoman officials would travel to the Christian peasant communities in the Balkans. There, they would select the strongest, healthiest, and most intelligent young boys to be taken into the Sultan's service. These boys were taken to Istanbul, converted to Islam, and educated in the Turkish language and culture. They were forbidden to marry or engage in trade. Their entire lives were dedicated to the state and the Sultan. They were, in essence, the Sultan's slaves, but this was a position of immense privilege and power. They received the best training, the best equipment, and the best education the empire could offer. This rigorous training forged them into an elite brotherhood. They were among the first infantry forces to make widespread use of firearms, giving them a significant technological advantage over their knight-based European adversaries. The combination of discipline, training, and advanced weaponry made them nearly invincible for a time. However, the very source of their strength eventually became a source of weakness for the empire. As the centuries passed, the strict rules governing the Janissaries began to relax. They were allowed to marry, have children, and engage in business. Their sons were often allowed to join the corps, transforming it from a merit-based elite into a privileged hereditary caste. They became kingmakers and palace plotters, using their military power to interfere in politics, depose sultans who displeased them, and resist any attempts at modernization or reform that threatened their status. This once great institution slowly turned into a powerful and dangerous obstacle to progress. No empire, no matter how powerful, lasts forever. For the Ottoman Empire, the peak under Suleiman the Magnificent was followed by a long, slow, and complex period of decline. The seeds of this decline were sown even during the Golden Age. After Suleiman's death in 1566, a series of less capable sultans came to the throne. Unlike their warrior predecessors who led armies in the field, many of these later sultans preferred the seclusion and luxuries of the palace. Power began to shift away from the sultan himself and into the hands of the viziers, palace officials, and the women of the imperial harem. Externally, the world was changing rapidly, and the empire struggled to keep pace. In Europe, the Renaissance and the scientific revolution had sparked an explosion of technological and military innovation. European armies became more professional, their weapons more advanced, and their tactics more sophisticated. The Ottoman military, once the most feared in the world, began to fall behind. The decisive naval defeat at the Battle of Lepanto in 1571, while not catastrophic, was a significant blow to Ottoman prestige and a sign that their command of the seas was no longer absolute. Economic problems also played a major role in the decline. The discovery of the Americas and the new sea routes to India by European powers bypassed the traditional land routes that the Ottomans controlled. This meant a significant loss of trade revenue. At the same time, a massive influx of silver from the New World into Europe caused rampant inflation throughout the empire, destabilizing its economy. The government struggled with finances, often resorting to devaluing its currency and imposing heavy taxes, which led to unrest and rebellion in the provinces. More importantly, the failure of the Second Siege of Vienna in 1683 marked a crucial turning point. From this point onward, the Ottomans would largely be on the defensive in Europe. While the empire still possessed enormous territories and considerable strength, it had lost its dynamism. It was slowly becoming stagnant, a giant struggling to adapt to a new and more competitive world. The long twilight had begun, setting the stage for the final chapters of its history. By the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire's decline was so pronounced that it was famously labeled the sick man of Europe by Tsar Nicholas I of Russia. The empire was facing immense pressure from all sides. European powers, particularly Russia and Austria, chipped away at its territories in the Balkans and the Black Sea region. Internally, the spirit of nationalism, ignited by the French Revolution, was spreading like wildfire among the empire's diverse ethnic groups. Greeks, Serbs, Bulgarians, and Romanians, inspired by ideas of self-determination, rose in a series of revolts throughout the century, fighting for and eventually winning their independence. In response to this crisis, a series of reform-minded sultans and ministers attempted to modernize the state. This period, known as the Tanzimat, or reorganization, saw sweeping reforms aimed at centralizing the government, modernizing the army, and creating a new sense of common Ottoman identity to counteract nationalism. In 1826, Sultan Mahmud II took a brutal but necessary step. He violently disbanded the rebellious Janissary Corps, which had become a major obstacle to any form of progress. But these efforts were ultimately too little, too late. The final blow came with the outbreak of the First World War in 1914. The Ottoman leadership, now dominated by a political group known as the Young Turks, made the fateful decision to ally with Germany and the Central Powers. This decision dragged the empire into a devastating global conflict for which it was ill-prepared. The war was a catastrophe. The Ottomans fought on multiple fronts, in the Caucasus against Russia, in Mesopotamia and Palestine against the British, and at Gallipoli against the Allies. While they achieved a famous victory defending the Dardanelles at Gallipoli, the overall war effort drained the empire of its last resources and manpower. The war also witnessed one of the darkest chapters in Ottoman history, the Armenian Genocide. The Ottoman government, fearing that the Armenian Christian minority would side with Russia, embarked on a systematic campaign of deportation and killing, resulting in the deaths of over 1 million Armenians. When the war ended in 1918, the Ottoman Empire was on the losing side, completely defeated and exhausted. Allied forces occupied Istanbul and large parts of what remained of the empire. The Sultan was now a mere puppet. The Treaty of Sèvres, signed in 1920, formalized the dismemberment of the empire, carving up its lands among the victorious powers. After more than 600 years, the once great empire had reached its end. The final collapse of the Ottoman state gave birth to a new nation. From the ashes of the empire, a fierce Turkish nationalist movement arose, led by a brilliant and charismatic army officer named Mustafa Kemal. He had been a hero at Gallipoli. Rejecting the humiliating Treaty of Sèvres, he organized a resistance and fought the Turkish War of Independence against the occupying Allied forces, particularly the Greeks. He was victorious. In 1922, the Sultanate was officially abolished, bringing 623 years of continuous Ottoman rule to a close. A year later, on October 29, 1923, the Republic of Turkey was officially proclaimed, with Mustafa Kemal, who would later be given the title Ataturk, or Father of the Turks, as its first president. Ataturk embarked on a radical program of secularization and westernization, seeking to build a modern nation-state completely divorced from its Ottoman and Islamic past. He abolished the caliphate, replaced Arabic script with a Latin alphabet, adopted Western legal codes, and promoted secular education. The fez and veil were discouraged in favor of Western-style dress. His goal was to forge a new Turkish identity, looking forward to Europe rather than back to the lost empire. For much of the 20th century, the Ottoman legacy was officially downplayed in Turkey, seen as a symbol of a decadent and backward era that had to be overcome. Yet the legacy of the empire is far too deep to be erased. It is visible everywhere in modern Turkey. The magnificent mosques of Istanbul still dominate its skyline. The cuisine, the music, the language, and many social customs are all deeply rooted in the Ottoman past. In recent decades, there has been a renewed interest and pride in Turkey's imperial history, a phenomenon sometimes called Neo-Ottomanism. The empire's cultural and architectural achievements are celebrated, and its complex history is being re-examined, not as something to be rejected, but as an integral part of the national story. Beyond Turkey, the empire's influence continues to echo across the world. The borders of many modern nations in the Balkans, the Middle East, and North Africa were drawn along old Ottoman provincial lines. The ethnic and religious complexities of these regions are a direct result of centuries of Ottoman rule and the millet system. The cultural heritage, from coffeehouses in Sarajevo to architectural styles in Cairo, bears an indelible Ottoman stamp. For 6 centuries, this remarkable empire stood at the crossroads of civilizations, shaping the destinies of 3 continents. Its story, one of incredible rise and poignant fall, remains a powerful and essential part of our shared human history.